Hi, it's Andrea. It has been a while. Um, Life stuff has happened and I've gotten busy, and I figured I would do a not quite wrap up, but something close, because last time I did a wrap up was the end of March, and it's now the middle of June, so I clearly can't do a full wrap up, or else that would take a really long time. So what I thought I would do is just talk about a couple of the real highlights, and then just list off the rest, maybe with a couple words. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts about that, or just talk about that more, just talk about those titles more that I actually don't talk about in detail, then say so in the comments. And then, yeah, this is literally the only way I can think of to not make this video get really long. But I've had a great reading months. I think I've been really hitting my stride with understanding really what I like and what I want to read, but I do want to find ways to sort of branch out of my comfort zone sometimes too. But yeah, without further ado, let's pull up my plan was to film outside, and then it started drizzling, and I'm kind of hyper anxious about my camera and my computer and my books getting wet, so we're improvising. So the first book that I finished after my last wrap up is Bruised by Tanya Botheju, which is definitely one of the ones I'm going to actually talk about. This is actually on its way to me now in my own copy, because I just loved it that much and know I will want to reread it and annotate it and have it, because it really, really impacted me, and was just a really, really fun book to read, as well as being just really emotional and difficult, but in a really bittersweet kind of way. We follow Dea, who is a Sri Lankan Canadian 18-year-old girl, I think. Yeah, she's in her senior year of high school, I'm pretty sure, but it's very not focused on the high school aspect of it, which I liked. So her parents have just passed in a car accident a while ago. I can't remember exactly how recent, but it was pretty recent, like within the last year. And she will bruise herself to cope with the pain and the grief, and just really is trying to be as tough and strong as possible, which to her means not expressing emotion, not processing emotion, and facing that. And so she joins a roller derby team in hopes that she will be able to get better bruises there, but it doesn't quite go as planned. And she meets lots of interesting girls on the team, including the team captain, I believe, and her sister, who are both really impact her life in different ways. And it's really just a story that is exactly the type of like upper YA that I really love. It has so many vibrant side characters. It's very queer. And sorry about the neighbor dog barking, if you can hear that. It's also got the supporting characters are all older too. Like the love interest is 19, and like pretty much everybody else is even older than that. Like there's a really sweet NB best friend who's like 22 or 23, and they have a partner who is also like their age. And yeah, I just really liked that opportunity to see people my own age in YA books, because you don't really see that. I don't know. We'll come back to that. But yeah, I adored Bruise, and I'm probably forgetting about something about it because it's been a little while since I've read it, but I'm hoping to maybe even get the chance to reread it this year. The next like major book I want to talk about is The Barrow Will Send What It May by Margaret Killjoy. This is the sequel to The Lamb Will Slaughter the Lion, and follows the anarchic demon hunter Danielle Kane and her pals on another adventure, and I just really loved it because now that I had been really solidified into this little crew from the first book, which had felt sort of quick to me, this one helped me to like really see the characters and dig into their found family and just really, really want more of them. So I really would love it just if Margaret continued the series. Then did I bring this with me? Yes. The next really impactful book that I read was This Wound is a World by Billy Ray Belcourt. This was the buddy read for Sage's Patreon in April, which was in honor of Poetry Month. And now I just want to read everything else Billy Ray has written, and he is one of my like idol poets. He is from the Driftpile Cree Nation, and he's based in so-called Canada. Yeah, it was an absolutely beautiful, beautiful collection on being gay, being indigenous, living and desiring and grieving in a colonized world. And there were a lot of really, really cool list poems and prose poems, as well as general like line break poems. And I highlighted a lot and definitely will be coming back to a lot of these. So for me, this is like a staple poetry book that I want to like recommend to people now. Also along the veins of poetry, this one wasn't like intensely impactful, but I really want to talk about it because it, I think, deserves some hype because it is very small, both physically and in the sort of world of poetry books. It's A Homegrown Fairy Tale by Susie F. Garcia, and it is a collection of poems that is based around Oz. And that was a thing that I was very much invested in when I was a child, like 9, 10, 11. And to be able to read this collection that placed the character of Dorothy and the stories of Oz, drawing from not just the film, but the like wider world of the novels that were written in the early 1900s, which I know have issues, or rather that the author had a lot of issues. But this is queer and Latina and just very sweet and Midwestern based, which I loved as well. I would recommend checking out the poet and just where she may be going in her career. I heard about it on Franny Choi and Denez Smith's podcast Verses. So yeah. Then I listened to One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, and then I pre-ordered it so that I could get a print of August and Jane and attend a launch Zoom through Politics and Prose Bookshop with Casey and Talia Hibbert, which was really sweet. But yeah, I'm sure you've heard about this book. This is where I'm coming back to really loving seeing characters my own age in a book, because August is 23, and I don't think I've read a book where the main character was my age in years. Maybe I'm completely forgetting about something, but reading so much YA and adult, both during like 19, 20, 21, 22, like you don't see characters who are like leads that age that often. Unless it's in new adult, obviously, which One Last Stop is new adult, but I haven't read a lot of that, especially in the past. And a lot of what is currently published out there, or what you kind of find under that genre label at the moment, doesn't appeal to me a lot. So we'll see. I'm really excited to see how that genre develops, though, and how I can maybe write into that genre, too. I mean, I'm sure there have been some where it's like a sort of following the characters through their life, and then they are therefore in their early 20s. And that didn't quite stand out to me in the same way that, like, this is like, yes, all of these characters are in their early 20s, and it's very focused on that stage in life. So that was one thing I loved about it. I found Jane Sue to obviously be a very cool, hot book girlfriend, and but what really, really sold me on this becoming one of my new favorite books is the found family, the sort of love letter to gay history, to queer history, to vibrant queer culture that is very different from what I've experienced because it's like set in New York City. We're on the subway all the time. That is very different to my experience or the kind of experience that I want in life. But it was really, really fun to read about that and to really see how vibrant all of the friends were and to see how just all of these elements that I really love in stories, the found family, the vibrant side characters, the queer history, the like music aspects, like of course a sapphic romance, and then like the characters who are like invested in social justice, although I'm sure that that aspect could have been fleshed out more in some ways. But yeah, it was just really, really fun and heartwarming. Oh yeah, and then the other thing that really appealed to me about it was that it was like a mystery in some sense, but it was not the like detective story, get the law enforcement involved. It was like a more soft mystery where like characters are just figuring out through like library records and research and like internet sleuthing and that kind of thing, like the answer to this big question. And I love that in stories, and so that was another fun element that was in this too. I think I'm gonna briefly talk about the Subtweet by Vivek Shraya. I listened to this a couple weeks ago. I've been listening to a lot of really short audiobooks, and I was kind of a bit hesitant about whether I would like it very much because I'd heard some mixed reviews of it, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I love that it was a book about music, because that's something I love seeing, like about people who create music, and like that the fact that it has a soundtrack to it, which I've only heard 2 songs of that are on Vivek's Spotify, because otherwise you have to have like a code or a link that's in the back of the book, but I listened to it, which is, so it's obviously not like on Libby. So I have to maybe check it out of the library so that I can see or hear the rest of the music, because I really, really would love to do that. It's about being brown and trans femme in music and the internet and Twitter. It was just like a really, really real and honest feeling story about being like a part of internet culture and like the way that that affects your friendships and your relationships, and the sort of like constantly waiting for texts and like sort of analyzing things. And it just felt really relatable in that way, even though the characters' circumstances were like quite different, obviously, from my own. But like, I just thought the way that Vivek Shraya portrayed that was really insightful, and yeah. Okay, so then I listened to Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters, which was for Bert and Sean's My So-Called Book Club. And I'd been wanting to read this for a long time. I had watched the movie a couple years ago and really liked it. Rachel Sterling, who plays the main character, was one of my first like queer awakening TV show crushes, from her role in The Bletchley Circle, where she played Millie. And so I went into this 19-hour audiobook expecting it to take me like a couple weeks to listen to, maybe. But I listened to it very quickly, on like 1 1/4 speed. But it was so much fun. It's a very detailed, very slow, yet very fast-paced story about this young woman named Nancy Astley, who's a oyster girl in England in the 1890s or late 1880s, and falls for a, like, I guess, Victorian version of a drag king. I think they were called male impersonators, named Kitty Butler, and then just follows this whole like queer saga of London and growth and coming of age and theater and the sort of queer underbellies that I believe I read something about Sarah Waters kind of like elaborating on the small bits of history that were available for that, but it felt really, really historically grounded in the detail and just somehow the way that the character narrated the story, because it was very like memoir-ish and like anecdotal. It was just really, really easy for me to get through listening to. And yeah, it was just really fun and really makes me want to read more of Sarah Waters' books. Like, I used to really love historical fiction and read a lot of stuff set in the kinds of settings that she writes in, but it was all like cishet and like middle grade, and I really it feels cool to experience that again in a different lens that is like much more what I enjoy reading now, and especially being like such like strongly classic pieces of queer literature. So yeah, I would recommend it if you like historical fiction. So the last one that I'm going to talk about in detail is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Chang Tom. This was another short audiobook, and it is subtitled as A Dangerous Trans Girl's Confabulous Memoir. It's described as the highly sensational, ultra-exciting, sort of true coming-of-age story of a young Asian trans girl, pathological liar, and kung fu expert, who runs away from her parents' abusive home in a rainy city called Gloom. Striking off on her own, she finds her true family in a group of larger-than-life trans femmes who live in a mysterious pleasure district known as the Street of Miracles. In this Street of Miracles, there is this wonderful sisterhood that has its issues, but also always has each other's backs. And then when one of them is murdered, they sort of become this vigilante gang who, like, stalks all the transphobes and the violent men and the cops, and, like, it sort of comes to a head, and they just have a lot of inner wrestlings and growth and interpersonal relationship things. And there's this really sweet sort of, like, running subplot. I mean, not really, but like a sub-theme where the main character is writing letters back to her little sister at home. It was just really, really good, and I really want to read the rest of Kai Chang Tom's work. But yeah, I don't know, there's something about the interpersonal relationships between all of the women in the Street of Miracles and the ways that, like, they had past history with each other, and then there's, like, new people coming in, and, like, sort of idolization and mentorship, and just a lot of the discussions about, like, coming into your own and what it means to be a trans woman in a modern day city were just really, really powerful, and I would really recommend it. And the surrealism stuff was just fun. There was, like, a lot of really beautiful instances where it feels very real, and then it just really has, like, these twists, and I really love that in stories. Which is also another reason why I liked One Last Stop, because that had a hint of magic in the real world. Anyways, so that's it for all of the more detailed reviews, and everything else that I read, roughly in order, was A Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. I liked it, but not the romance. Still definitely recommend. The Need by Helen Phillips was one that I buddy read with Sage. Very interesting twist at the end. I also read, or listened to, Ace by Angela Chen, which was a great nonfiction book about asexuality and aromanticism and society's views of sexual relationships, platonic relationships, and just super, super interesting, really validating and helpful and well written. Then I also listened to Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Tossig, who has an Instagram that is also called Sitting Pretty. She has a lot of her writing on there, so definitely would recommend checking that out. I wish the book had gone farther in a lot of ways, just in terms of it felt just very liberal, while also talking about a lot of disability justice concepts that I'm familiar with from more radical, like, scholars and activists, and so it was just an interesting mix. Then I read In My Own Moccasins, A Memoir of Resilience by Helen Knott, which was for Erin and Danny's book club. This was beautiful, really heavy, major trigger warnings for assault, and just a lot of really intense stuff. But it was really good, and there was a great Zoom discussion for the book club. I read Surviving the City by Tasha Spillett and Natasha Donovan. I listened to Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas. I also listened to Kings, Queens, and In-Betweens by Tanya Botheju. Then I read Queer Attachment and Anti-Oppression Toolkit for Relational Healing by Leah Jo Carnine and Fiz Percal. This is a zine, but it was on Goodreads, so yeah, this was incredible. Definitely recommend. I listened to Pizza Girl by Jean Keong Fraser. I finally read the last little bit of my printout of Our Prison's Obsolete by Angela Davis, required reading, and then Peril of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This was for Climate Fiction Book Club. The live show is on Sage's channel if y'all have read the book and want to check it out. Also would definitely recommend Adrienne Marie Brown and Toshi Regan's podcast, Octavia's Parables, I think is what it's called. It analyzes the book chapter by chapter, and they're both incredible. I haven't finished the podcast yet, but really, really great analysis of the book. It's also extremely intense, more intense than I expected it would be, so just forewarning, like a lot of very, very casual references to just like assault and violence and burning stuff down and death, just like a lot of on-page sudden death. So yeah, be aware of that. I'm not sure if I will read the sequel very soon, but I am intrigued by it. Then I read Check Please Book 1 Hockey, which was really fun, and then finished I'm Alive, It Hurts, I Love It by Joshua Jennifer Espinoza. This was interesting because it's all center-aligned, and I don't tend to like center-aligned poetry, but one of my dear queer poet friends gave a copy of this to me. They had an extra and were like, this is the only book of center-aligned poetry that I like, and the author is a like essential piece of trans feminine poetry in today's writing scene, and I really liked it. It was really, really beautiful. Lots of really sweet imagery and yearning, and a lot of sort of coming of age vibes to it, and lots of stuff that I underlined and starred. So yeah, I'm excited to read more of her later work, because I think there will be ways that she has grown a lot as a poet since then, because this was first published in 2014. Then this was like just a reissue. And then I listened to Passing by Nella Larson, Amateur, A Reckoning with Gender, Identity, and Masculinity by Thomas Page McBee, and Across the Greengrass Fields by Shannon McGuire. Were my 3 short audiobooks for this past week, and I just finished Check Please Book 2, Sticks and Scones. So that is it for now for my what I've been reading lately. I'm hoping to do some more vlogs soon. I'm in the middle of Sister Outsider, debating on what I'm going to listen to next. I'm thinking probably The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. And I'm also going to start Dear Santaran, which I just got my pre-order of from my little local radical indie bookstore. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know how your reading has been going, and if you've read any of these, what you thought. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the other books that I didn't talk about as much. Sorry I didn't put up covers for some of the ones, because I know I just mentioned them so fast, and I just don't have the editing patience for that. So anyways, farewell for now.